we would have loved to do some postmortem on what actually were the causes of this situation. But I don't know whether that would help much. The situation as we find it now requires our attention. And this parliament should consider itself not as a war government or as a constitutional government or parliament, but in fact as a parliament that must sort out the economy. And more than anything else, the thing that will pain us, the things that must set us to scratch our heads is how to bring back the economy to shape, because we aren't doing any good. The many things that we promised our people on the campaign trail depend on the economy. And unless we sort out the economy, there is very little else we are going to do. So we people who are in the Jubilee government are also in this government. The only consolation we have is that I hear that the president is very well advised by economists. I hope these economists will now crack this nut and tell us what ought to be done so that we can come out of this conundrum. Mr. Speaker, the economy is what has caused a lot of unemployment. And of all the problems honorable members will face in their constituencies, I think we will be able to tackle many. But I think the one that will give us a lot of disappointment is the employment issue. Where are we going to get jobs for the many young people we have today? If we don't sort out the economic problems we have, I tell you, many of us will not be re-elected because the young people do not want to hear about it. They want jobs, and they don't want you to go back and tell them that we went and faced the, I think, sharks on the Jordan, because they do not know in the first place that there was a Jordan to cross. So we have to sort out the economic issues today and not tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I noticed that the President has laid strong emphasis on agriculture. And coming from an area of agriculture, where agriculture is the main activity, must say that the President's efforts should be supported. But Mr. Speaker, the problems are because of production. Production in agriculture is a very expensive thing in Kenya. Not just the fertilizer, but beginning from the tractors that you hire, the fuel that you put into it, and therefore the fertilizer. However, it is a good step that we have addressing the issue of fertilizer. Unfortunately, if you get farmers to go to the NCPB to buy fertilizer and say that they must be registered farmers, that is not good, because that is creating red tape. In fact, that will encourage corruption. Put this fertilizer on the shops, in the shops, so that people can buy them from there without having to go to get a signature from the DO or from the chief. They need to buy to access their agriculture, their fertilizer from the shops. Mr. Speaker, the President has addressed the issue of health. And as far as I can see, health is a very, very touchy issue. We are looking at it from the point of universal health care, and I think that is okay. But I would also like to ask a question, whether this House, although it is a House that believes in devolution, whether health is actually ripe for devolution. I think myself, Mr. Speaker, that by giving health to people down there at the county, before we prepare them properly, we are risking the lives of many of our Kenyans. And I think it is time for this House to reconsider and to whether this issue, health shouldn't be brought back a little bit to where the experts are more, because not every governor is ready to see health the way the rest of the country would like to see it. I believe myself that we should not have devolved health too soon. We still need our doctors to be controlled centrally, to be posted centrally, so that we can be able to develop the facilities well. And Mr. Speaker, I think at some point the government decided to hire machinery, which they would have bought. at the same price. We should now target the acquisition of X-ray machines, of MRI machines, of cancer machines, and place these within the hospitals in our localities. Mr. Speaker, I wish therefore to register my thanks to this speech.
Honorable Member for Endebess.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to register my thanks on the President's speech. First and foremost, I want to congratulate you, Honorable Speaker Moses Wetangula, for your election as the Speaker of the National Assembly, and also Honorable Paul Cholet for being elected as the Deputy Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the great people of Endebess for having seen it fit to elect me as their Member of Parliament for the third time consecutively. I want to assure them that I'll continue delivering the services as I've done before and make sure that there is great development within that area. Honorable Speaker, when you read our Constitution, in Article 1, it says that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. The people may exercise their sovereign power either directly or through this democratically elected representatives. On 29th, Honorable Speaker, I was glad that when the President came to this House, we had all the three arms of government, because the Constitution recognizes in the same Article 1 that the sovereign power under the Constitution is delegated to the state organs, and that is Parliament, the judiciary, and the executive. And when the three arms of government were able to be in this House during the President's speech, it brought us as a country together, and that was very important, Honorable Speaker. I listened, and I've read again the President's speech. When my senior colleague in the profession, but also the same, we are in the same category as members of Parliament, Honorable Nyikal, referred to Article 10 as being divisive in the President's speech, I had to reread it again. And when I reread it, the President said, I submit to you that the fact that the election was so close is an indication that what unites us is always much more greater than what divides us. With the support of Kenyans, we've lodged ethnicity as the central organizing principle of our politics, thereby retiring it for good, the ethnic mobilization and personality cults, together with their culture and practices of exclusion, discrimination, patronage, tribalism, and nepotism. Many of the young Kenyans in the street, Honorable Speaker, they do not look at themselves as Kikuyu, Sabaot, Luhya, or anything. They look themselves as Kenyans. This issue of people talking of their... But when you sit down with your child to speak at home, they never think of themselves as any other person. They think themselves as Kenyans. And it is upon us to cultivate that culture among our people. In the President's speech, Honorable Speaker, the President talks of his administration allocating 50 billion every year to the Hustlers Fund, from which micro, small, and medium enterprises can access affordable credit to start and expand their businesses. Many Kenyans outside there are looking forward to this Hustler Fund, and they are looking into this House to see what legislation we can be able to provide, because as far as the president is concerned, he laid down his policy. He didn't have to give the details. It is upon us, because I've heard some people talk about why we've seen the president's speeches being very short. It lacks the details. It is the details that it is upon this House to come up with. How do we operationalize the Hustler Fund? The president has said we can be able to allocate that 50 billion every year to make sure that Kenyans are able to access affordable credit. They are able to access the Hustler Fund and do businesses. The mamambogas, the border borders, and everybody who is outside there, your constituents. So this calls for the unity of this House to come up with legislation and regulations in which to be able to operationalize this Hustlers Fund. The president went further and said there is tremendous opportunity for the House to fully take up its role in resolving the systematic issues that limit access to affordable homes and affordable finances. And we've seen the president the other day going to Mukuru kwa Njenga and launching the housing project. We've seen him going to other areas and talking about the same housing projects. My friends, Honorable Kaluma and others from Homa Bay, you missed an opportunity, because I think your people, I don't know whether in Homa Bay town, people must be, I don't know whether they have enough affordable houses. Your governor was away, Honorable Kaluma was away, and you tweeted to say that you needed to have been informed. But it was in common knowledge that the president was going there for church service. But it was upon you to make sure that you welcome the president and raise the issues concerning your people, especially in housing matters. In the president's speech on matters health, which I'm passionate about, considering my background as a medical doctor and a consultant surgeon for that matter, the president talks about universal health care. And he goes further to say that we must be able to look at it right from the area of preventive, promotive, and looking at chronic illnesses. We are in a society where many of the lifestyle illnesses, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and other illnesses are setting in because of our lifestyle, our lifestyle nature. We should be able to look at issues of universal health coverage, right from the promotive, preventive, and chronic illnesses. We should also be able to make it affordable for every Kenyan, that every Kenyan can access insurance cover, because many of you, you've heard that we are moving ATMs. Many of you, when you go home, our constituents will come and say, I need a Harambe because I have a huge for my brother, for my us to raise, to be able to be raising that money for Harambe every now and then. But if these people are provided with you, walking into the hospital, you are treated, you get medication. If it is an operation, you're operated. If it's a question of asking for any other investigation to be done, it is able to be done. You are given medication and you walk out of the hospital. Then it will make life much easier for all of us. And lastly, among other things, is the issue of fertilizer subsidy. This, considering that NTV is an area that is agricultural productive area, our farmers will welcome it, and we would want the National Cereals and Produce Board to have a better way of making sure that this fertilizer reaches to the farmers in a more accessible, efficient manner, so that we can be able to increase our production. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to record the thanks to the President's speech. Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Bonchari.
Thank you, Speaker, for the opportunity. I take this opportunity to thank who was my teacher at Parklands Law School. I also take the opportunity to thank the people of Bonchari for having confidence in me and electing me as member of a debate, statements, questions, legislation, as a way of representing you and your interests, as we talked, as you advised me during the campaigns. To look and listen to the speech by the President in the 13th Parliament, and like it has been noted, that it lacks in detail, but I hope in due course there will be policies to support it, his intentions and wishes for it to be actualized. I note that it talks about cutting recurrent expenditure on paragraphs 40, 41, 42 of the speech. It talks about enhancing savings so that we have money for astronomically. He also talks about the poor culture of savings, which undermines investments in this country. It talks about affordable housing. Now, with regard to savings and investments in this country, often we forget to take note that investments are both local and international and foreign. And when you look at what makes Kenya attractive or not attractive as an investment destination, there are a number of things that we need to learn and take care of. The cost of doing business in this country is quite high. You talk to any investor, foreign or local, the cost is pretty high, which needs to be looked at and be controlled through this 13th Parliament. In addition to that, there are inefficiencies, there is corruption, there are a lot of gatekeepers. When looking for simple things like approvals and licenses, it takes up to 5 years to start a business in this country. I'm writing a book with some people about doing business in Kenya, and when you do research, one of the things that stands out, Kenya compared to other countries in the region, is that we are not very attractive because of the reasons I just said. Now, in most cases, when we talk about tend to focus on a lot of people don't have decent house. In the rural constituency. What we learn around and what we hear around is that our foreign reserves are dwindling. The cost of living is skyrocketing. And as we talk about trying to move towards the free market, but let's take cognizance of the fact we want to move towards the free market economy. Even there are programs that the youth unemployment, particularly in Bonchari, stands at about 60%. We need to have a conversation now. We need to deal with the youth unemployment. It's a time bomb that needs to be addressed now, and I hope that there's going to be legislation in this House that is going to address this problem, which I believe is not unique to Bonchari, but elsewhere in the country. Our youth, our future, they have talents, they have the skills, they just want opportunities. The poverty index in Bonchari is one of the highest in the country, around 44%. And I hope that I'll be bringing statements or legislation or bills that are going to help alleviate this problem in Bonchari. The Bonchari people are very hardworking, they are good farmers, they just want opportunities, they want to be lifted, they want a little support so that they can fend for themselves. One thing about this country, particularly those of us who come from agricultural areas, the prices of our commodities are very poor. The value chains are inefficient, something we need to look at, something we need to, as parliamentarians, representatives of the people, we need to take care of so that the value chains are made more efficient and the farmers get a decent pay for their sweat, and they can be encouraged to contribute to supporting the economy and making this economy grow. After all, agriculture is the mainstay of this economy. Education standards in the Bonchari are not very pleasing. The infrastructure is very poor. Even when we heard about the allocations from the Minister of Education, we didn't get as much. I'm hoping that in the current budget, and maybe budgets to come, we're going to have budgets that are going to support the infrastructure of our schools so that we can have the infrastructure and the environment that is friendly and is enabling for our students to learn and get the education and the skills they need to be useful members of society. Bonchari Province is one of the few constituencies that doesn't have a TVET. I hope in the next 1 year or 2 years, we're going to have a TVET built in Bonchari so that for the many young people who want to acquire skills in plumbing, in masonry, and so on, can get a place where they can acquire these skills. The infrastructure in Bonchari is very poor. Our roads, energy, we need a lot of energy. I'm going to be pushing and hope that I get the support of this parliament so that we can have the roads we need and enable our farmers to take their produce to the markets. Protection in this country is you're going to get, we need social protection. We need the money that is allocated for the elderly people to reach them in good time. We need the record to be updated so that those who have fallen in that age group are taken care of and are supported so that they can be able to buy food, they can be able to buy their clothing, they can be able to buy their medication. I'm big for you. We've talked about for a long time in this country, but it looks so elusive to be accomplished. I pray that this time it's going to be accomplished. You can be able to do it, because one of the things you're going to be receiving that from all our people is about medical bills. The cost of healthcare in this country is very high, and I hope that we can be able to find a solution to that. You go to any hospital, you go to any physician, when you come out, it's very high, and it's even worse for the ordinary people in the villages. I recognize that's the function of the county governments, but bring motions that are going to make our healthcare affordable and accessible to the people. Otherwise, we'll be attending burials every other time. Like in my constituency, there are so many. We can't afford to have that. It's unfortunate and it's something regrettable that in this century, in this era, a number of people in Bonchari don't have title deeds to their land, particularly the people of Simwaga, in Bonyando, in Ogiakumu ward, they don't have title deeds for their land. I hope that the government can the people of Ogiakumu, the people of Wamurenda, the people, I am here to work for you, our constituency together. Thank you very much.
To reciprocate by serving diligently with all my might, knowledge, and wisdom, God before me. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I want just to make a few remarks on the presidential speech, which, in my opinion, resonates very well with the great people of Gatanga. The great people of Gatanga are farmers and trade, and has addressed the issues of trade. Madam Speaker, the President has elucidated on the need of the government to provide cheap fertilizer. The reason why the unga today costs 220 shillings is because of what we call added costs in the process of farming, from the seedlings to fertilizer, cost of input, and that's why in the presidential speech, I want to support it and say this, he addressed on the issue of production as opposed to the issue of consumption. And I'll happen and pray that as we go further, other than getting what we call cheap fertilizer, we expect to get subsidies in terms of cheap seeds, cheap inputs and implements, even reducing the cost of power, especially for farmers who pump water to do irrigation. Madam Speaker, I also want to address the issue about agro-processing, which is also connected with farming. Gatanga sadly has almost 60% of our youth unemployed. And we do believe that the moment we embrace agro-processing in agriculture, the way we have done in tea, we do it in avocados, we do it in macadamia, we also do it in tea. I do believe and trust that our youth can be able to get employment, and we're able to absorb all of them and be able to make sure that we are able to expand the net of the people who are contributing to the taxes of this country. And to that end, Madam Speaker, it is my agenda that to do meaningful farming, we also need to embrace what we call modern day technology. And one of the things to do is to ensure that we are able to avoid relying on what we call the natural rain and embrace irrigation. Madam Speaker, sir, Madam Speaker, I'll bring in a bill shortly to address the issue of water in Gatanga. It's sad to mention this, that the Kaine Dam, which has been supplying the whole of Nairobi with water, all that water is carted away and not a single drop of that water is consumed by the people of Gatanga, either domestically or even in terms of irrigation. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll bring us a bill shortly before this House to be able to address the issue of irrigation, whereby that water, so that this can have what we call equitable distribution of that water in such a way that the people of Gatanga, where that dam is situated, that water is used for irrigation, and people are able also to consume that water as well as we serve the people of Nairobi. Madam Speaker, I also want to bring up the issue about the universal health. One of the biggest challenges in where we come from in Gatanga, and I've seen honorable members elucidating to it, it touches in almost every corner of this country, is having huge loads. Every day we are getting messages, we are putting in WhatsApp groups, whereby each and every day we are contributing money toward medical support of our people. And the president elucidated that he's going to make sure that we are able to embrace universal health in such a way that our people will get the NHIF card, and the burden which they have, which you are busy supporting them, is offloaded from our shoulders, and they can be used that money doing other things. And therefore, I pray the members of parliament, when the legislation is brought before this House, to revamp, restructure NHIF in such a way that it can be responsive to our people's needs. Madam Speaker, I expect the members of parliament to be able to support it fully. Madam Speaker, I also want to support the presidential speech, especially when it comes to address the issue pertaining to Hustler Fund. That is the way to go, because as you find, our people, Kenyans do not want to be given a fish, a hook to go and fish. And the moment we are able to put aside 50 billion each and every year to support the hustlers, the mamamboga, the mtu mkokoteni, the kinyozi, what we are doing is to ensure we are empowering our people at the bottom to ensure that everybody puts a shilling in their own pocket and they can be able to contribute to the economy. And to that end, Madam Speaker, I am planning to bring in a vendors and hawkers bill to this House. Because despite the fact that we can be able to bring those funds to our people. There is no legislation which is recognizing the hawkers, which is recognizing the vendors in our streets, which is recognizing those small traders. What happens is that the county governments, whenever they see them on the streets, they chase them away and they cut their goods. So even before we bring that, before we bring the Hustlers Fund, we need to come up with a legislation to protect and empower and recognize those hustlers. Madam Speaker, sir, I also want to support the issue of the CDF, which the President also supported in his speech. The CDF, as we have seen in almost every part of this country, has done marvelous. And I want to assure the people of Gatanga that the CDF Act 2015 is alive and kicking. We shall be able to support education. We shall be able to support the food program, and we shall be able to support all the infrastructure development which are pending to ensure there is proper service. Deputy Speaker, I want to thank the President for nominating gallant soldiers in the CS position. I want to first of all make sure that I recognize the nomination of my mentor, Honorable Moses Kuria, Honorable Alice Wahome, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, Kidiki Kithure, Jogona Ndongo, Rebecca Miano, and I wish and pray that this House will find favor and give them support and nominate them. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you so much.
Honorable Member for Mandera South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will take this opportunity to, first of all, say thanks to my constituents for having elected me as their Member of Parliament. It was a tough election in my constituency and in many parts of northern Kenya, particularly because of the raging drought, and many pastoralists went through very difficult times choosing between tendering their animals and also participating in the democratic process of electing their leaders. And therefore, I thank them very much for having elected me as their member. I come from Mandera South constituency, which is a constituency in Mandera County, bordering a very difficult neighbor, Somalia on one side, and Ethiopia on the other side. Coming back to the President's speech, I would say that the President's speech, particularly between paragraph 5 and 7, encouraged a lot about the confidence that Kenyans have in Parliament and also the executive. The President's speech was very inspiring in the sense that he noted that a lot more members have been re-elected in Parliament and also a lot more members who are re-elected in Senate. And he also mentioned about the broad-based support the government has got in 39 counties, having achieved 25% in the 35 counties. And the President reminded us, and maybe it is a challenge to us, that the confidence shown in us, both as Parliament and Executive, must be translated in terms of raising the bar to serve Kenyans, and also to ensure that there is accountability to the electorates who have elected us. As a member of Mandera South, I think my people that I represent in Parliament will definitely be happy to support the legislative agenda of His Excellency, the President, because the agenda actually is transformative on many issues that affect the people of my constituency. The President particularly talked about people living in, people living in the region where I come from, northeastern, particularly Mandera County, have historically felt left behind or marginalized. But the president's speech was very inspiring because he said his administration will be an open and transparent administration. Of those key departments that I've just mentioned. The plan of scaling up productivity in agriculture is also a very welcome idea, particularly from the region where I come from. And I would emphasize particularly that the need, the livestock part of the agriculture should be given equal prominence, just like the crop part of that agriculture. And I think when we talk of consumption and subsidies,